Well, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening. Welcome to the State and Local Government Education and Healthcare Birds of a Feather session. Pretty excited about this. We've got some really great speakers here today to talk about security and ransomware and how they continue to be top of mind for our state and local government and education and healthcare customers. In this session, we're going to present how NetApp addresses these challenges and how our customers have successfully implemented solutions like Cloud Secure to manage and audit events. We'll also talk about some internal features that we have with our NetApp solutions that you may not have been aware of. We're going to share some key factors in the decision-making process. Talk a little bit about lessons learned, some best practices, and some outcomes. Whether you're new to NetApp or considering re-architecting your environment as a public sector customer, listen to what some of your peers are doing in the industry. Today I'm joined by Matt Trudwin, who's a NetApp security expert, one of our leading security solution advisors within NetApp. Sean Paglusa, who's a technical account manager for our state and local government education and healthcare customers. Ryan Strecker, solutions engineer in SledH, and then myself. I'm the CTO for the SledH group. So let me get into a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. Matt's going to kick it off, and he's going to talk about our approach to security. Some things about ransomware and zero trust and items that I think that are important for you to know. You may or may not know these already, but it's always good to hear those from the experts. We'll talk a little bit with Sean today about his customer and how they're taking advantage of Cloud Secure and Cloud Insights in utilizing that to manage their environment. We'll end it with Ryan Strecker talking about his state customer, and how they're looking to consolidate and how they're utilizing Cloud Insights to manage their customer base. At the end, we'll do some lessons learned. With COVID, unfortunately, we're not in the room together so that we would hear questions, but feel free to send them to this group. And then some takeaways from the group. So hope you're going to enjoy it. So Matt, let me start with you. Appreciate it, and thank you for joining this call today. I know that whenever we have security questions within our group, we always turn to you. And you're going to talk to us a little bit today about ransomware and how we're approaching security. So let me go ahead and, again, thank you and turn this over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bob. Really happy to be here today. The first thing I really want to dive into and talk about is something we call zero trust. And it's not just something that NetApp is talking about. In the whole security industry, zero trust is very top of mind buzzword right now, so to speak. And you hear a lot about it in the networking vendors specifically. Not a lot of storage vendors are talking about it, but it is very important. To understand what zero trust is, you think about the old model of security, right? In the old model, you had a firewall. Everybody inside the firewall is generally trusted. You would verify it. And everybody outside of the firewall, that's your bad guys, right? Your hackers, your nebulous people that could be doing nefarious things. Well, that is a very old-minded approach to security. Really, what zero trust says is no matter where you're coming from, you should never trust anybody, whether they're inside the network, outside the network, inside the firewall, etc. You don't trust them. You always verify at every step. And that is even more important now in the environment where many of us are working in, work from home environments. You think about the endpoints out there, so many insecure endpoints, laptops, desktops. I know even I've heard examples of people being forced to work from home and having to pull a laptop right out of the closet that hasn't been updated or patched in 3 years. And that really scares security guys like me to hear that, but that is why zero trust is so important. And how that applies to NetApp or ONTAP is we have a lot of zero trust security controls built in. So some of the concepts of zero trust, we mentioned that it's an inside out approach. We talk about it in terms of having your micro core and your perimeter. So your micro core is your data. You look at this diagram on the left-hand side here, and your data is in the center of everything. And you have people, devices, workloads, networks, all integrating with that data, right? Well, data at the center, because data is the most important, but you still need to know where your data is at. What type of data is it? Some data is more sensitive than others, right? we all know, let's face it, we all know file permissions, they're hard to handle. You can't just lock things down with file permissions. People will end up with permissions that maybe they change jobs and their permissions never get reset, right? So that's why you want to have additional controls beyond file permissions. And that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. Also, monitoring and implementation of that monitoring is so key, because you want to know who is accessing that data and how long did they access it, right? This is going to be really important also for finding out if ransomware is in the environment. As we'll talk a little bit more about later, ransomware can be around in the environment for a while, and if you aren't logging and notifying, you may not know, right? So ONTAP, we're going to talk a little bit more about this on the next slide, but ONTAP, you want to use that, think of it as the segmentation gateway for your data, right? You want to try to place those security controls as close as you can to the data, and how better to do that than with ONTAP system or NetApp system. So we're also going to leverage F-Policy. You'll hear a lot more about F-Policy later on in the presentation, and we'll talk a little bit about how our partners can help you here as well. Okay, so I mentioned using ONTAP as a segmentation gateway for zero trust architecture. And so this is really about expanding that microcore. We've talked about data's in the microcore, but you can have multiple storage virtual machines. You could think of each one of those as a mini microcore. So you can have different security controls per SVM. And again, this is something we initially built for secure multi-tenancy before we were even thinking about zero trust security architecture. But it works out great because ONTAP's SMT, secure multi-tenancy setup, has been verified by third parties. It meets common criteria validation. So it's very secure. And you can split up different groups within your company. I know we're talking to a lot of education, right? As part of this, local government, you can have different groups within there on their own storage virtual machines. And that's been built into ONTAP for a long time, at least since 8.3, if not earlier than that. Another important control of this is encryption, right? Not only encryption at rest, that is very important, right? If someone gets a hold of your disks, your disks go off site, you don't want them to be able to read that data. But also encryption in flight. We do have support in ONTAP built in for IPsec as of 9.8, which is pretty cool. We're able to talk about that at this conference now. So that can encrypt anything like iSCSI, NFS, SMB. Additionally to that, we have support for a while now, since 9.6, for SnapMirror. We call it cluster peering encryption. If you have SnapMirror, SnapVault, FlexCache, all that can be encrypted while in transit over the wire. Again, I'm talking about two different types of encryption here. You have your at-rest encryption and your in-flight encryption. So IPsec was the big one for 9.8 that we added. We've had management layer encryption for a long time with TLS. We've also got other ways to protect that management traffic, right? I mentioned logging earlier, but you can log, of course, all the actions taken on the system in our audit logs. But why not go ahead and add multi-factor authentication? Multi-factor authentication prevents some of the largest attacks you would get in your environment because it requires two things, right? Not only username, password, which everybody knows stolen credentials are out there, that can easily be had sometimes. But if you have multi-factor authentication, they need something else to access the system. So that's why that's so important. Been built into ONTAP since 9.3. And then looking at all of your network traffic as much as you can, logging that is pretty critical, especially inside and outside of ONTAP. Those logs, typically we like to integrate those with a SIM. There's many different SIMs. A SIM is just a security information event management system. And zero trust is all these things. So the big thing to take away about zero trust is that it's a different mindset shift. And we have TRs on our NetApp website out here. You'll see a link to security.netapp.com later. If you want to really dive more into zero trust, you can. But let's talk a little bit more about ransomware specifically. And we're going to talk about it in two ways, not only to remediate and restore from ransomware, which is so key to eliminate downtime. Downtime is the biggest cost in a ransomware attack. The longer you're down, the more impact it's going to be to your business's bottom line. But we also have built-in ways that you can detect and prevent ransomware from spreading. The quicker you detect it and prevent it, the faster you're going to get back up online. So what's NetApp's solution for ransomware? We're taking the zero trust approach, right? We go back to that. So of course we've got NetApp F-Policy. I've mentioned that a lot, and that's our zero trust engine, because not only can it help you classify your data, go beyond file permissions, right? See what users are actually doing. but it has this capability for user behavioral analytics. And what does that mean? Let's say that Joe in HR on a Friday night, 7 o'clock at night, goes ahead and opens up all the files he has access to, thousands of files, and just starts going through all of them and making changes. Well, even though he has access through file permissions, that's outside of his normal behavior, right? So it's more likely that his account has been compromised. When you're using F-policy with user behavioral analytics, you can detect that. Now, it does need a third-party external F-policy server to integrate with it. It uses the NetApp F-policy feature. And we're going to talk a little bit more about one of those later on in this presentation. One of them is NetApp Cloud Insights with Cloud Secure. That's one of those external F-policy servers that integrates very well. But the key thing is it doesn't need a pattern like you think of antivirus signature patterns, right? And you detect, oh, it's, this version of ransomware, maybe it's WannaCry. If it's a brand new 0-day ransomware that has no signature, user behavioral analytics is going to find that out because it's a user behavioral change. And that's what's so awesome about it. And it's how we can detect this abnormal behavior. Now, if you want to, and you're first rolling it out in your environment, you could just go ahead and only notify your operations center, your NOC or whatever, that, hey, something suspicious is going on. But once you get comfortable with it, customers usually go ahead and say, block that action, So it's very easy to integrate into your environment, and it doesn't really lock you out of normal things you would do, right? In addition to Cloud Insights, which we're going to get into a little bit later on, we're also going to talk about some other external F-policy servers, but there are some built-in and native ways that you can detect abnormal behaviors that might be ransomware. One of those is snapshot rate of change or loss of storage efficiencies. If you start seeing a lot of your snapshots grow larger in size, or you lose storage efficiency, that's a very good indication that something like ransomware might be changing all the files in your environment. And we have built-in ways to detect that. Unified Manager, on ActiveIQ Unified Manager can alert you when those types of things are occurring, particularly with the snapshot change. So let's talk a little bit more about F-policy here, why it's so important. I mentioned all the capabilities that it can do, but one of the things I haven't talked about yet is the native mode. There's two modes of F-policy. External mode is where you get the power of that brand new 0-day ransomware attack, no signature out there for. And that's where you need one of these external F-policy servers. You see all of them on the right-hand side. There's our Cloud Insights again. We also partner with all these other guys. But there is another mode, native mode, where you don't require the external F-policy server. Native mode works off of a allow or permit list or deny list, right? You can do both. So block or deny or allow. When you're going in allow mode, you're saying, I know exactly what my workload is. I'm only going to allow PowerPoints, Word documents, Excel documents, and nothing else. That prevents a lot of ransomware, right? Any ransomware that uses extension-based. Or you can go the other way. If you say, I want to block WannaCry in my environment, block WNCRY, right? It's great. So native mode right there, you don't require the external server built in, and that's what's so great about it. And while it doesn't cover those brand new attacks or attacks that don't use extensions, it's built in cheap, it's no cost, so it can still so it can still protect you from a lot of those different things. So let's talk a little bit about snapshots. That was all about detection and prevention with F-policy, native mode, external mode. But let's talk about NetApp snapshots again. Now, if you're familiar with ONTAP, you might think, well, snapshot's a snapshot. I know about all that. What you might not realize or might have forgotten because they've been around so a while is how amazing NetApp snapshots are. So when it comes to a NetApp snapshot, they just use pointers, right? A lot of other vendors, they use copy on write snapshots where you basically write the data, and when you write over it, you have to move it to another location. What does that mean when it comes to restore time? Well, when you go to restore a snapshot with a lot of other vendors' products, you're going to need to wait to restore. With NetApp, since it's just pointers, take a look at this example here. We wrote blocks A, B, and C. Ransomware came and they changed blocks B and block C, changed it to B1 and C1, right? Well, time to restore. You simply update the pointers. Now we're pointing back at blocks B and C. It happens like that. It really does happen in a snap. I have personally seen 10 terabytes restored in seconds, right? You don't have to wait for that data to be copied from the special snapshot location into the active file system. So that's what a lot of people kind of forget. And if you remember, I mentioned this, downtime is the real killer of your business for ransomware. So the sooner that you can get back up online, the more you're eliminating that cost, right? And that's why ONTAP snapshots in particular are so important for restoring from. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about hardening your snapshots though, because one thing about snapshots is they can be deleted, right? As administrators, you can go in with the administrator cluster, you could delete it. So you do need to protect from that. This is where a lot of the zero trust security controls are going to come back into play. But a few things you might have not known about here is you can turn off NetApp snapshot auto delete. It's actually off by default, but for a while there, a lot of customers did turn it on. It's a great feature in terms of, if you're beginning to fill up your space on your volume, you want to be able to write, so delete the snapshot. But in the case of ransomware, really what it's doing there is just deleting snaps so you can write more encrypted data. That's not good. So we do recommend turning snapshot auto delete off. Snapshots also have something called an expiry time. A lot of people don't know about this. In fact, I only found out about this in the last couple of years, but you can set a specific time when a snapshot expires. That means you cannot delete the snapshot until that expiry time has been changed. This really helps for accidental snapshot deletion from administrators that might accidentally delete the snapshot. If you set expiry time, and you can do that globally, then you can prevent that from occurring. Also, you want to keep enough snapshots. I mentioned a while ago that ransomware could basically exist in the environment for a couple months, 2 to 3 months. By keeping a longer retention, you're ensured of your snapshots, you're ensured that you're able to be able to go back to those restore points, right? So typically I would say you want to keep at least 2 to 3 months if you can. Of course, you can keep a lot more if you're using something like Fabric Pool. You can tier those snapshots off to cheaper and deeper storage. So that's a good idea. You also want to protect against stolen credentials. I touched on this with Zero Trust, but MFA is key. You can use two-factor authentication for SSH. Use certificates whenever you can, like for your REST APIs and Zappies if you have those in your environment. Restrict management traffic, right? The ONTAP firewall has a built-in way to restrict which IPs can manage it, right, from SSH. So you can just say, I only want to allow it from this particular subnet. There's no reason to have it wide open out of the box. Roles-based access control, this is actually pretty cool. A lot of people know about RBAC, but if you want to get really, really granular with it, you could go so far as to only allow the administrator account to log in through the serial console and set up roles for everybody else so that you really can't use the administrator account unless 2 people agree. We call it the break glass account. They go through some internal process or procedure, they break the glass, they get that administrator account password, and then they can only log in through the serial console. It's very obviously restrictive, but you do have that capability if you want to go that deep. A lot of NetApp government customers do go that way. And of course, logging and auditing, right? That's so important. We do have a couple of TRs around this. If you want to dive into the details, you can see those here on Zero Trust and hardening. The last thing I'll say though about protecting your snapshots here is SnapLock compliance. Pretty cool because with SnapLock compliance, not even administrators can delete the snapshots until the expiry time has passed. So if you were to have compromised credentials for some reason, they got a hold of your credentials in your NetApp system, if your data, snapshot data, is in a SnapLock compliance aggregate, ain't nobody deleting it. Now be careful there because the default is 30 years. So you do want to make sure you set expiry time on that appropriately. Yeah, so basically that is it as far as hardening your system, protecting your snapshots. Those are all key. But the big thing is that the bulk of this is built in. Actually, from an ONTAP perspective, Bob, all this is built in. The only thing you might need to bring to this is an external F-policy server. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in this presentation.
Matt, thank you very much. That's fantastic. It's always interesting when I talk to customers, and some of them aren't aware of security.netapp.com. They're not aware of the built-in default security features that we have in ONTAP and the benefit that we get of running ONTAP not only on premises, but ONTAP in the cloud. So when you start to look at TLS between on-premises and the cloud, or customers using disaster recovery, some customers don't know, or they've forgotten that we have 1,023 snapshots per volume, right? That you can do that now in FlexGroup. That when you start to look at all these technologies that are built in, why not take advantage of those? And then look at all of the hard work that we've done out at security.netapp.com and hardening those systems and really getting a very secure environment and better preparing yourself for ransomware. Excellent information, and we'll turn back around to this when we get to the key takeaways. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.
So let's jump into Sean. Sean, I know that you've been a long time NetApp technical resource, solutions engineer, and now you're a technical account manager covering New York. I know that you have customers that security is top of mind for them and you've been able to help. Why don't you go ahead and give us an example of one of your university healthcare systems that ran into some security issues, and now you've been helping them out?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Like Matt said, there's a lot of built-in tools into the ONTAP system, but we can enhance a lot of those features using some third-party products, and actually NetApp has its own product now called Cloud Secure. So one of the examples I like to talk about is I work with a state university hospital system. They actually own a NetApp product called Cloud Insights, and it was an investment they made, for some alerting and performance optimization features, and that product also includes the Cloud Secure feature now, which is an auditing and threat detection tool used for ransomware detection. And it's actually kind of funny, when the customer purchased that Cloud Insights product, they didn't even know that Cloud Secure was in there. And it was right around the time of the pandemic, so when everybody was sent home. So we had actually postponed getting the Cloud Insights software installed, and we were just on a normal check-in with the customer, and he had mentioned that he needed an auditing tool because he's got a lot of things happening, like users deleting data and moving data, and changing permissions and things like that. And I said, hey, you already have one. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, that's features built right into your Cloud Insights product now. It used to be separate, but now it was integrated. And that actually sped up the process of getting Cloud Insights installed. We actually did it all remotely the following week. We are up and running in 45 minutes. Very lightweight installation process. And one of the added benefits, it's a hospital, right? So they have regulations around HIPAA, around PCI, the way they handle data. So the product actually helps them meet those requirements because we audit and track how the data is handled in the environment. Like I said, very easy to get installed and results within the next day. The customer was actually emailing saying, hey, somebody deleted some data, and I was able to go and track it down and figure out who did it and where it was, and very happy about the product very quickly. Another funny story is the customer, their security team went out on their own to do a proof of concept on a competing product. And apparently the story was that they installed the product, and they came, the vendor came back to them and said, hey, your environment's pretty clean, but I see a lot of data where the last access time on the files are getting updated, and it seems like a weird pattern of data access. So my customer actually said, okay, let me go check, and he went into Cloud Secure and was able to go and prove to that vendor that their software was the one actually making the changes of the data. Kind of funny, but I think that's going to give us an opportunity to speak with the security group and show them our product. And I think it's going to be priced pretty competitively to what they're looking at, and maybe it'll give us some cost avoidance, or give them some cost avoidance around getting another product. They already have something there. So, and then I just wanted to, we're working with another very large service provider. They provide services to many of the agencies in New York City. And over time, they've always had, different agencies have always come up and asked about auditing that the provider's never been able to really do that as far as cost goes and capabilities. And now we're in the middle of a refresh of their equipment, and we're looking to have Cloud Secure be the auditing platform for all these agencies. And because we can deploy, I think Matt mentioned before, because we can deploy it in a multi-tenancy environment, it works perfectly for all the agencies who want to individually control their own auditing and just see their environment. That's really it. I encourage you to take a look. Maybe sign up for a POC, and feel free to reach out to any one of us, or your NetApp representative, and we can have you take a look.
Sean, great job on that. I think what I would add to this and some of this information is that we talked about security.netapp.com as being a one-stop shop for hardening and ransomware and really getting some good information on it. I think cloud.netapp.com is another great site to take a look at, where you'll find more about cloud insights and cloud secure. And I think what you're going to continue to see is pieces of these come together, whether it's our Spot technology, whether it's what we still do on premises with our on-command insight. We've got some really valuable insight into what customers are doing from a security perspective. It was interesting with that. So it sounds like I heard POs from you too on those two new customers, right? But it's interesting in that the customer didn't know about these features of cloud insights, having cloud secure. And I think that's one of the things for birds of a feather, right? And making awareness of tools and technologies that customers didn't understand or didn't know about. I think customers that are listening to this can also, they should reach out to their team, to their technical team, and have them help out, because they can reach out to Sean, or we'll hear from Ryan in a second. But good knowledge out there in the field and helping customers get through this. Sean, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Appreciate you jumping on. Hey, Ryan, jumping over to you now. Appreciate joining. I hope things are great in upstate New York for you. But I know you have customers that are either looking at Cloud Insights and Cloud Secure or utilizing it today. Why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about your state agencies that are looking at Cloud Insights and Cloud Secure?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Hi, everybody. Ryan Strecker. Like Bob said, I cover upstate New York. I, similar to Sean's last example, have a large state entity. They're a service provider, really, at the state level. And within their business, they have over 50 of these agencies that they support. So that's their customer base, right? They have leveraged ONTAP Secure Multi-Tenancy, as Matt discussed, for years now. Multiple storage virtual machines within a very large NAS footprint. It's over 3 petabytes of NFS and CIFS file data, 120,000 unique users daily. So a very large environment that, as you can imagine, is pretty complex to manage. Within those 50 plus agencies, there's all kinds of requirements, right? So everybody has a different compliance metric that they're looking to meet, different security controls that they have to have in place on their data. And they're a service provider, so they're not the stewards of the data, but they need to be able to provide the capabilities, required so that we can centralize under this large organization. So, within those agencies, like I mentioned, different compliance requirements, HIPAA, PCI, and really the one we're going to talk about today is CJIS. It's an FBI requirement that some of these customers need to meet, or the system that the data is sitting on has to be able to meet. And CJIS is a very large compliance metric to meet, right? There's a lot of different things within CJIS. There's physical access to the equipment. Folks have to be fingerprinted. So when we talk about Cloud Secure and Cloud Insights and how we're using it, it's not the one-stop shop for CJIS compliance. It's important for us to enable our customers to meet all of these parts and pieces of this larger CJIS requirement. So, like we said, petabytes of data, hundreds of thousands of users. We can't have a product or solution that needs a lot of babysitting and a lot of configuration, right? They're really looking for a product or solution that we can deploy quickly. Sean mentioned 45 minutes. That's not an exaggeration, right? Cloud Secure and Cloud Insights can be deployed very, very quickly. It's a SaaS application, so we can spin up the tenant in minutes, honestly, and then a really small on-premises agent to collect that data. It's a one-way street out to Cloud Insights. We're gathering all of this data using the F-Policy engine that Matt talked about earlier in the presentation. We see in near real time what every user against this very large file services cluster is doing. So we're collecting all sorts of information about all of these users, reads and deletes and moves and file copies and everything else that you can think of. And that was really the initial use case for Cloud Insights and Cloud Secure. We just want visibility into this very large environment. Well, turns out we're also migrating data that has to meet the CJIS requirement. So a lot of those data points that we collect, all the moves and deletes and everything I just mentioned, Those are things you have to collect in order to be CJIS compliant. We log all of them in Cloud Insights in near real time. We store them for 13 months in Cloud Insights, and you can even pull those reports out and export them as an Excel spreadsheet and load them into historical systems if you need to keep them for longer than that 13 months. And so this customer is using Cloud Insights and the feature Cloud Secure to meet those requirements, retain that data, know with confidence that all that data is being collected in real time. It's being sent up to Cloud Insights as a secure SOC 2 compliant platform, right? We're confident in the security of the data, both as it's being transmitted up and ultimately stored within Cloud Insights, and really hands off. So we talked about simplicity, ease of use, deployment. You stand it up in minutes, the tenant is up and running, we deploy the agent, and there's really no maintenance. There's no building rules and configuring signatures like Matt talked about. It's all behavioral based, right? We're looking for anomalies in the environment, but we're also not requiring the customers to configure Cloud Insights or Cloud Secure to gather the data that they're looking for. We pull it all at F policy. It's little to no impact on the system. We send all that data up, store it for them for over a year, and allow them or help them to meet these requirements that their customers have set forth. It's, as Sean mentioned on his slide, a really cost-effective solution, right? And like I said, most importantly, it's simple to manage and deploy. So,
fantastic. Anything else that you would take away from this? And that is it providing springboard into cloud? Is it providing analysis or understanding of an environment that maybe they didn't even understand?
I think one of was initially the first reason we're looking at Cloud Secure is understanding what users are doing. So at 3+ petabytes and hundreds of thousands of users, there's a lot of accidental drag and drops or maybe deletes and then restores as a result, right? And as a service provider, but not someone who's looking specifically into the data to look for duplicate files as an example, they get a lot of requests for restores, and to understand where the data was moved, maybe we don't have to mount up a snapshot and pull the data in and write it, and now we're duplicating data across the shares. Maybe we just look at Cloud Secure to go, oh, that file was moved over here, let's just go get it back, right? So saving storage costs because we're not duplicating data across multiple shares, and just having visibility into currently their on-premises environment. But as we look to the cloud and leveraging things like Cloud Volumes ONTAP, this same product in Cloud Insights and Cloud Secure can monitor all those environments holistically. So as this customer moves forward and possibly leverages the cloud further, we can use the same platform to monitor and manage it.
It's good to hear.
Thanks,
Ryan,
Bob.
thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think that I'm going to circle back to all, I was going to say all four of you, all three of you in a second. But I think that the takeaways, if I could leave the audience with this, is that there are a lot of ways to address security within the systems that you have. Some of those features are built into ONTAP operating systems. Some of those are techniques that you can use with limiting rights through F policy or managing what's going on. But looking at achieving a zero trust with NetApp technology, I think is something that is top of mind. I also think that using the technology built into ONTAP helps prevent the ransomware spread, right? And if you're looking at what you're doing with F policy, and Matt hit on this, and looking at what you're doing with zero trust and secure multi-tenancy, and really driving more of the benefits of snapshots and what you can do with the snapshot technology becomes important. Some key information for these technologies, if you can come back to this video and listen to Matt over and over, or you can go to security.netapp.com or reach out to your NetApp team. Before I get off of that, Matt, anything you want to add to that?
You covered it very well, Bob. The only thing I would just like to remind people is that avoiding downtime is really so critical for a ransomware attack. If you've been hit, the faster you can get back up online, the better prepared you'll be. So just deploy all this, and particularly rely on our snapshots to get a speedy recovery, get back to doing business as usual.
So you heard from Sean and Ryan today about Cloud Insight and Cloud Secure and how their government customers and healthcare customers are utilizing that to manage their environment better and understanding really the activity of the users, then using that to prevent access, prevent deletions, and then really lock down their environment a little bit more, reporting on that. I think that Cloud Insight and Cloud Secure, which can be found at cloud.netapp.com, more information around there, and you can kick the tires. But is simple to deploy, simple to manage, no manual configuration. Sean talked about the 45-minute configuration time and you were running. But really, Cloud Insights and Cloud Secure will help you meet the auditing requirements that your CISO or your security groups may have. So Sean and Ryan, appreciate you guys jumping in and talking. Anything else you would add to Cloud Insights and Cloud Secure that the audience may want to hear?
I mean, I just think it's interesting. I've been at NetApp for 10 years, and we've always been asked if there's a product to audit, things like that. And, we had our tools, but we usually, for an F policy driven type of system, we've always pushed them to partners, and now NetApp is part of that ecosystem, and we have our own product now that our customers can look at. So, and it meets other needs as well.
Great point. I know that we can talk about 9.8 now on this call, and whether it's file system analytics that comes in 9.8 or anything, we continue to move the ball forward on security encryption and understanding customers' environments. Right? Matt hit on IPsec earlier. Customers with NFS, right, need that for Kerberos, and so some key areas that if you're not aware of, good to talk to your team about on this. Ryan, anything you need to add or would like to add?
I think from a platform perspective, what's really cool about Cloud Insights is because it's a SaaS product, right? Tons of new features are rolled out all the time, and that's true even for Cloud Secure. We had a couple little key pieces that we needed as part of Cloud Secure to meet that CDRS requirement, and then that's an agile product. There's no manual upgrades, so if something new comes out, it's published to the end users or the customers, and you get to use it. It immediately just shows up in the product. So I think that's really important, right? Take advantage of all the new stuff as it's released.
Fantastic. Well, Matt Trudwin, I appreciate you coming in and talking about NetApp security, especially from our the engineering corporate point of view and looking at. We're field facing, Sean and Ryan, myself, but it's always good to hear what we're looking at it from the NetApp side. Sean, appreciate you coming on and talking about your customer and what they're doing in healthcare and how they're taking advantage of Cloud Insights and Cloud Secure. Same with you, Ryan. Upstate New York, it's beautiful this time of year, and I appreciate you talking to us about what your customers are doing. I think I can end it now, but again, thank you, and talk to you soon.